Hello everybody. In this video I'm going to show you step by step my thoughts on how you would answer the Module 2 test, which is over linear equations. If you're using this to study for your final, then I would recommend that you go through this video once and copy everything that I write. Then you try to go through the test on your own using only your notes. And then after that you try to go through the test one more time before your final without using any notes at all. The more times you solve a problem in math, the more likely you are to remember how to solve a similar problem. With this first one, we have a total distance, and we have the word varies directly, that's a keyword, and we have time in seconds. And then they give you two numbers, they give you a distance, and they give you some seconds. They want to know which of these equations would represent the situation. Whenever you see the words varies directly, that means that you're going to have to write an equation, and that equation is not going to have a y-intercept. The y-intercept is going to be 0. Direct variation means the y-intercept is 0. Whenever you see varies directly, whatever happens before that, whatever variable happens in front of that word is going to be the y, and whatever happens after that word is going to be the x. So d is going to be equal to something, a slope times t. Because whatever multiplies t is going to be the slope no matter what in every linear equation. Whatever multiplies your x variable is always the slope. They only gave you two numbers, and with slope we always know that the y's go on top and the x's go on the bottom. With direct variation we only need one x and one y. So let's just take the distance and put that on top, and take the time and put that on the bottom. And then when you do that division, you're going to get 18. 18 inches per second, which is the first answer choice. Okay, if we have a graph, first look at the graph and then look below it, because that's normally where the question is. The question wants to know the domain, and the domains are the x's. If you look at the answer choices, we can cross out two answer choices because those inequalities don't use x, they use g of x, and g of x is the same thing as y. So the domain, let's follow this down, and we see that it touches at -9. Let's follow this to the x-axis, and we see that it touches at 2. So both of these answer choices have a -9 and a 2. The difference is, over here on the left side we have an open circle, but on the right side we have a closed dot. Open circles are for inequalities that do not have equal to, and a closed dot means an inequality with the equal to sign. Since we have an open circle on the left, that means our left one should not have an equality sign. So that's answer choice A. For question 3, we have a line. The line's going downwards, so we know the slope is going to be something that's negative, which means we can cross out the first answer choice. Just because we know the line is going downwards, that means the slope is negative. They want a slope that's parallel. If lines are parallel, then that means it's going to have the same slope, but this new equation is going to use this point. So if we're going to get a parallel line, we need to have the same slope as the first line. Let me put 2 points. And now let's find the slope of this green line. Okay, one point is 3, 0. The other point that's up top is a 0, 3. Zero minus 3 over 3 minus 0 is -3 over 3, which is -1. And all of the answer choices have a slope of -1, so that didn't change. That didn't give us any extra hints, except now that we do know the slope, we could write an equation in y equals mx plus b form, but we haven't really practiced that, so let's not do that. Instead, we're going to use y minus y1 equals m x minus x1. If you wanted to learn on your own how to use y equals mx plus b, you can come to a tutorial class and ask me, or you can look at one of my other YouTube videos. But using point slope form, we know that the slope is -1, and we know that -3, 2 is going to be on there. So we're going to have minus -3, which means we're really going to add 3. And we're going to have equals y minus 2. Okay. In our answer choices, since none of them have parentheses, we need to distribute by multiplying -1 times x plus -1 times 3 equals y minus 2. -1 times x just makes a -x, and -1 times 3 makes a -3. And we still have the y minus 2 on the left. If you look at all the answer choices, none of them have anything next to y, so we need to cancel out the -2 by doing the opposite, which is to do a +2. That makes it cancel out on the left, and on the right side we have a -3 plus 2, and that's going to leave a -1. So our final answer is going to have y equals -x minus 1, which is the second choice. This one wants a slope-intercept form. They want to use this point, and they want it perpendicular. If we're going to be perpendicular, then we're going to have to do the -1 over the slope, which means we're going to flip the slope and change the sign of it. So if this slope was 1/2, then it's going to become -2 over 1, which reduces to -2. Now let's use the point slope formula. We're going to put the -2 in there, and we're going to take our point that they gave you, and we're going to plug that in. So we're going to subtract the x, and we're going to subtract the y. But since we have two negative signs, that's the same as just doing a +2. If you look at the answer choices, none of them have a parentheses, so that means we need to get rid of the parentheses by distributing, which means multiplying the outside number times each number that's inside. -2 times x just makes -2x's. -2 times -4 makes +8. And we still have a y plus 2 on the left. But we do not want the +2 to stay here. We want that to go away. So we need to do the opposite, which is to subtract 2. And we get y equals -2x plus 8 minus 2 makes 6. I'm about to bubble the wrong answer. I should bubble the first one, but here I accidentally did the second one. They gave you some weird notation, but f of x is the same thing as y equals x. And then they said, what if we change it so that we have 3 times f of x? And if you do 3 times f of x, that would mean 3 times x. So our two equations are y equals x and y equals 3x. Since both of these use y and x and nothing else, then that means that's in slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. In slope-intercept form, whatever is right in front of x is the slope. In the first one, there's nothing in front of x, so that means the slope is 1. And in the new one, there's a 3 in front of x, so that means the slope is 3. So that means the only thing that changed between these two graphs is the slope. If the slope changed, then that means it's not parallel because m changed. We didn't translate up because if we translate up, that means we're adding. But we didn't add anything, all we did was multiply. So no, that's wrong. The y-intercept would be if we changed b, which would also mean if we were adding. But we didn't add anything, so that means that's wrong. And that leaves answer choice A. The y-intercepts are the same. And if you wanted to, you could put this in your graphing calculator, use y1 equals x, and you would do y2 equals 3x, and then you would push the graph button, and it would show you a picture of two lines, one like that, and a second one a little steeper. Next question, they give you the slope and they give you a point. Since all we've been practicing is point-slope form, let's do that. Let's subtract the y, throw the slope in there, and since the x is subtracting -2, that's really going to do a +2. If you look at the answer choices, none of them have a +2, so those bottom two are wrong. Then let's distribute to get rid of the parentheses. 12 times 2 makes 24. If you look at the answer choices that are left, none of them have anything next to y, so that means we need to cancel out this -8. And we get y equals 12x plus 32, which is B. Okay, they gave you an equation and they asked for the y-intercept. The letter for y-intercept is B. This is a linear equation, and like 3 times already, we've converted point-slope into y equals mx plus b form. So all we have to do is the same thing we just did in the last question. We have point-slope. We need to get rid of the parentheses by multiplying by 5. That gives 5x minus 15 with the y plus 3 on the left. Then we're going to cancel out the plus 3 by subtracting it to get y equals 5x minus 18. Once we have this minus 18, that matches where b is. So our y-intercept is -18. C. What is true when comparing these functions? We have a graph on the left and we have a table on the right. If you look at the graph on the left, b equals 0, -2. On the right, this is our b. The first answer choice is talking about y-intercepts. The y-intercept of f is less than the y-intercept of g. Well, f had -2 and g had 1, and -2 is less than 1, so that's right. What are the intercepts? So to answer a question like this, I would make a quick graph. If you're trying to find an intercept, that means you're either on the x-axis or you're on the y-axis. If you were any dot on the y-axis, then that means you're right here in the middle of your graph. And if you're in the middle of your graph going up and down, then you have a 0 for x, and you're going to have something for y. So to find an intercept, if they give you an equation, you're going to put 0 for x. To find the y-intercept, you're going to put 0 for x, and solve for y. If you plug in 0, that's going to give you 0, and then we have minus 1.5 times y equals 18. Since we have a 0 in front, that doesn't matter because it's not going to change anything. But now we have a -1.5 times y. We're going to cancel that out by dividing by -1.5. 1.5 fits into 1.5 one time, and two negatives make a positive, and that leaves you with y equals 12. And this is the y-intercept, so that's really 0, 12. If you were going to solve for the x-intercept, then the difference is the x-intercept is something on the x-axis, and if you're on the x-axis, then that means your y is 0. So we would do negative 1.5 times 0, and we would leave the x from the original equation. We take this down here, and all we do is we put 0 for y, and we're going to figure out what the x number needs to be. And it's going to be, oh, look at that. Good thing I caught that. When we divide the 18 by the negative 1.5, it makes a negative 12. So the y-intercept should have been 0, negative 12. And this one should be x equals 3. And that one matches D. So hopefully you stuck around for that. All right, we got a word problem. We got y's. We got x's. The y's are money. The x's are hours. And they want the range. So I just skipped from reading the first sentence to reading the last sentence. The range means they want to know how much money these people can make. So now let's look at the numbers. We have a fixed cost of $100. So the $100 is something that's only happening one time. So we're just going to put plus 100 with no letters on it. But they're also charging $25 per hour. And we know that the hours are x's. So let's put an x on that. And if we add together these two numbers, that should get us our y. If we're trying to solve for y, then why don't we plug in numbers that these workers could work? They could work 0 hours. They could work 1 hour. And it says they could work up to 6. So let's just solve for these first two, and then we'll see if we can pick between the answer choices. 25 times 0 is 0. And if you add 100, you get 100. 25 times 1 makes 25, plus 100 equals 125. With these answer choices, we can see that the first answer we got was 100 for y, and the next answer we got was 125 for y. That means our first answer was not 0, our first answer was not 0, and our first answer was not 25. Our first answer was 100. You could keep plugging these in, and eventually you would get to 6 hours. And 25 times 6 is 150. And if you add on that 100 that's still in the equation, you get 250. And that matches right there. Next question. They want to know the value, and that means we're going to plug in this number. Negative 4.2 for x. So we're going to do 23.2 times negative 4.2 plus 2.5 in the calculator. So all you have to do is type this in the regular part of your calculator, and you get your answer. In this question, we have a slope and a point, and they want the y-intercept. Well, we've learned how to use the slope and a point before by doing point-slope form. And in point-slope form, we're going to subtract the x. Since it's a negative 6, when we write it in here, it's going to be a plus 6. We know the slope is negative 3/2, and we're going to subtract the 2 for the y. But point-slope form does not give you the y-intercept. We're going to need to convert this. And negative 3/2 times 6. Negative 3/2 times 6 is the same as negative 3 times 3, which makes negative 9. And we're going to get the final answer by adding this 2 over here to get y equals negative 3 halves x minus 7. Negative 9 plus 2 makes negative 7. The next equation wants standard form, which I only showed you a little bit, but standard form has xy on same side, and it has no fractions. So instead of having a negative 5 halves x on the right side, we're going to cancel that out by adding 2/5 of x. Oh, I think I said 5 halves. We're going to add 2/5 x to both sides to get 2/5 x plus y equals 5 over 2, because these two cancel out. Then we need to make sure that there are no fractions, and to get rid of the fractions, we need to multiply by whatever is in the denominator. So since there's a 5 on the bottom of a fraction, we need to multiply by 5 to each piece. When we multiply by the 5, it makes the fraction on x go away, leaving you with 2x. 5 times y makes 5y's. And then when you multiply this fraction, you're going to do top times top to get 25 over 2. If you look at the answer choices, this is none of the answer choices. So that means we need to go ahead and get rid of the last fraction. The last fraction is dividing by 2, so we're going to multiply everything by 2. For the x, 2 times 2 makes 4. For the y's, 5 times 2 makes 10. And for here, the 2 on top and the 2 on the bottom cancel out, leaving you with only 25. If you look at the answer choices, oh, I forgot the y. It should be 4x plus 10y. That is answer choice B. And all the other answer choices look like that, but they are not that. Ooh, a question about a sequence. Okay, so they said A1 is 6. So that's the first answer. And they want you to find the first 4 terms in the sequence. To find the next number, which is A2, we're going to do 4 times the previous. The n means whatever number you want to plug in is going to be equal to 4 times n minus 1, and n minus 1 just means previous. So A2 is going to be 4 times the first answer, which is 6, to get 24. To get the third answer, we're going to do 4 times the previous answer, which was 24, and that'll get you 96. If you look at the answer choices, there's only one of them that has 6 as the first one, 24 as the second answer, and 96 as the third answer. What are the equation and slope of the line? I almost didn't see this line, but it's going flat. And if you have a flat line, then that means it's going through the y-axis at 10. And if it's flat, then this is no steepness. And if there's no steepness, that means m equals 0. So let's find the one that says y equals 10 and the slope is 0. This is just like number 3 or something. F of x means y. So f of x equals x means y equals x. And they want to know which one is not true between y equals x and half of y equals x, which is y equals 0.5x. The distance between the y-intercepts is 0.5. Let's just look back at our last answer. In this one, both of these have y and x and nothing else, so that means it matches slope-intercept form, where the slope is going to be the number that multiplies x, and the y-intercept is the number that adds to x. In these two equations, nothing is adding to x. And if there's nothing adding, then that means that's a plus 0, because 0 is the number that means no change. So for both of these two equations, the y-intercept is 0. And if both of them have the y-intercept as 0, then why would there be a distance between those 2 points? Those are going to have the same y-intercept. So that's not true. They want an explicit formula. An explicit formula is no parentheses. It's similar to y equals mx plus b. So let's just distribute this thing by multiplying it to each number. We had the 7 in front. And if you look at these answer choices, they all have the variable in front, which is normal. This negative 3n should be the first thing that we write. So then after the negative 3n, let's put this positive 7 and a positive 3. A positive 7 and positive 3 add together to make a positive 10 with the negative 3n in front. So all that we did was we took the number with the variable. We made sure we didn't lose the sign in front of it. The 7 had no sign, which means it was positive. The 3 had a plus, which means we added together the 7 and the 3 to make 10, which is D. Okay, in this one we actually do have a plus. So this plus is going to shift the graph. This is actually like a really bad question to give y'all, since the only equations that y'all are used to right now are lines. So since y'all only know lines, a shift up is normally going to be the same thing as a shift left. But once we know things after lines, you'll know that a plus 3 inside the parentheses means that really we're shifting left the whole graph. So let me just write that little note. Once we start doing curved lines, this is going to be a lot easier to see, but this is basically how it goes. If you add something inside of the parentheses, that shifts the graph left. If you subtract something inside the parentheses, that's going to shift the graph right. And if you do something outside of the parentheses, if it's outside the parentheses and you're adding or subtracting, that's going to either move the graph up or down. You can go ahead and write this, or if you don't want to write this, you better just hope they don't ask you that question on the test. It's a really easy question to get right, but you just need to know how graphs work, which they showed you this in about 22% on Mathia. Easy question. Perpendicular slope. So that means we're going to find the slope of these 2 points, and then we're going to change it. All right, find the slope, throw some y's on top. Y minus negative 4, 3 minus negative 9, and we're going to get 4 plus 4 to make 8, 3 plus 9 to make 12, and then we're going to flip that to be negative 12 over 8. Then we're going to reduce that by dividing by 4 to make negative 3 over 2. The first answer. Slope should be no big deal. Just subtract the y's and subtract the x's. Perpendicular should be no big deal. You change the sign and you flip the numbers, which is called a reciprocal. The slope of this equation, okay, so this is standard form. To find the slope, we're going to change this to y equals mx plus b form. Which means we are going to get y by itself. To get y by itself, we need to cancel out 7x's. We're going to subtract 7x to cancel it out. If we subtract it from the left, we're going to subtract it from the right. Only have one more step. We want y by itself, so that means we're going to get rid of that negative 3 in front. Since the negative 3 is multiplying, we're going to divide by negative 3. That makes y by itself. 21 over negative 3 is negative 7. 2 negative signs make a positive 7/3 of x. For mx plus b, the slope is whatever is multiplying x, which is 7 over 3. Only a few more questions. We got 2 points, and they want the equation. So let's do point slope form, which means we need the slope. Use the y's, put them on top by subtracting. Put the x's on the bottom by subtracting. (21) and 56 can both be divided by 7. And we get 3 over negative 8. Alright, since this question didn't say to do perpendicular, that means any one that doesn't have a 3 divided by 8 is going to be wrong. Now that we have the slope, let's put this in point slope form. Since they used a 16 here, I'm going to use this first point. Y plus 5 equals negative 3 over 8 x minus 16. And what we just wrote is the same as C. If you look at these answer choices, they are all in standard form. Standard form is on the formula chart, and it's ax plus by equals c. So that means all we have to do is figure out, is 899 going to go with x, or is 899 going to go with y? And then are we going to add or subtract? Okay, the easy part. The question. The question is, which equation would be right if we spent a total of $68.89? Well, if we're spending a total, then that means we're going to add. So that means do not pick the bottom 2 choices. Now, they bought some ebooks for $8.99 and magazines for $3.99. B is for ebooks. So $8.99 goes with the ebooks, which is a B, which is the first answer choice. That's it. What conclusion can you make about f of x and f of x minus 5? You see how this minus 5 is happening outside the parentheses? If you look back at what I wrote before, if we are subtracting outside the parentheses, then we're going down. So let's see if any of these answer choices talk about going down. This one says the y-intercept is the same. That's wrong. This one says they changed the rate of change, which is the slope. That's wrong. We should be looking for it went down. This one says it went left. That's wrong. This one says it went down. That's right. We got a table. They want to know which equation. You could do this by hand, or since you got a calculator, and since eventually you're going to need this might even be on your final, since it is something that was taught this semester, do the stat, and then enter. Type in numbers, then do stat, right arrow, go to number 4, linear regression. If you do the linear regression, it will give you the slope-intercept form. And it's going to be D. There was a big hint that would tell you that it's answer choice D right away, and it's this number right here. 0, 3 means B equals 3, and there was only one answer choice that had B equals 3. Since you all probably haven't practiced enough to remember all this stuff, I would rather you just use the calculator to give you the equation easily. Here's the last question. Varies directly. That means B equals 0, and it means y, whatever goes first is first, equals whatever comes next, x. But there's still going to be a slope. So let's take the y and divide it by x, and that's going to give us our slope. In direct variation, the slope is super easy to get. You just take the y and divide by x. That's only because we know that the y-intercept is 0. And this is something that you've learned since back in the 7th grade, before COVID. 96 divided by 8 is 12. So if I take this number 12 and I put it for the slope, y equals 12x. Then they said y equals 168. So that means 12x equals 168. And we want to know what x is equal to. 12 times what would make 168? Do you think it's 12 times 5? I don't know, put it in the calculator and you see that it's not. 12 times 6, still not big enough. 12 times 13, that one might be close, but I feel like it's going to be 12 times 14. And it is 14. There's the end. Hopefully you took some notes. Use those notes to go through the test one more time. And then, right before you take your final, try to go through this one more time on your own. I'm telling you, the best way to get good at math is to solve the same questions multiple times.